Hi everybody. My name is Alex Wolf, and I am the program manager for the Nunalingni Piruqpaalirut Fund. We would like to welcome you to this very special webinar. It's really great to see everybody here, and we really look forward to discussing this exciting funding program. So to start us off today, I do want to go over today's agenda. So we will begin with an introduction to the center, followed by an overview of the Nunavut 3000 strategy. From there, we will discuss the Nunalingni Piruqpaalirut Fund, covering its background, eligibility criteria, recent updates, available streams, and some examples of previously supported projects. Next, we will review the grant process from start to finish. And then after that, we will walk through the key components of the application process and offer some guidance. And then before we address any questions at the end, we do want to share some different complementary funding programs that can be used for the next stages of your housing project. All right, so let us provide a bit of an introduction. The Community Housing Transformation Center, also known as the Center, is a nonprofit organization that was founded in 2018 with the intent of forging a more inclusive and resilient community housing sector. The center's current vision is to increase the community housing sector's market share to around 20% of the housing market through a variety of means. The main avenues through which we aim to achieve this mission is by building innovative and bold partnerships, and then also strengthening capacity and advancing housing development through grants, support, and training activities. And then finally, by supporting organizational growth and partnerships through knowledge sharing. This approach is underpinned by our values, which include collaboration, inclusivity, and long-term perspective. In practice, our approach can be seen in a few different activity areas. We have our services and special projects, such as our regional energy coaching services and Rent Smart and Community Housing Academy programs. We also offer grants and funding programs. The Nunalingni Piruqpaalirut Fund falls within that activity area. Next, I would like to introduce Stephen Westlake. He is a program manager at the Nunavut Housing Corporation, and he has played an integral part in the growth of the Nunalingni Piruqpaalirut Fund. Stephen also works closely with the Nunavut 3000 strategy, and I would like to invite him to share an overview of this strategy.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'm here joined with my colleagues here at headquarters in Ahved, in Nunavut. It's a real pleasure to co-present this update webinar for the Nunalingni Piruqpaalirut Growth in Our Land Fund in partnership with the Community Housing Transformation Center, who incidentally are great partners to work with, a fabulous team and staff, and they do excellent work for us with the Growth Fund, but also supporting community housing across Canada, offering programs and resources to help organizations such as yourselves joining us today. And I encourage you to visit their CHTC website, center.support.ca. So the Nunalingni Piruqpaalirut Growth Fund supports community housing developments, capacity building, and research, and is integrally part of our Igloolik building houses together, our Nunavut 3000 strategy, which is the basic continuum is on your screen right now. So some key points about Igloolik Nunavut 3000. In 2021, the 6th Legislative Assembly of the Government of Nunavut released Katujaluta Working Together, the mandate, and in response, the NHC launched the Nunavut 3000 strategy with a robust and comprehensive plan to develop 3,000 units by December 31st of 2030. Igloolik will improve our quality of life and lay foundations for transformative change for future generations. Expanding the housing continuum is an urgent priority and addresses the acute and significant housing shortages across the territory. Nunavut 3000, or Igloolik, is about rapidly building houses for all types to give families and residents more housing choices and include supported housing and affordable housing for rent or purchase. The NHC is targeting the development of 1,400 public housing units by 2030 and add 300 supported housing units, 900 affordable rental or ownership units, and 400 market rental or home ownership units to Nunavut's housing continuum. The Nunalingni Piruqpaalirut Growth Fund projects align with the supported housing and affordable housing parts of the housing continuum. I'm really impressed with the Growth Fund approach, projects, and proposals we received so far through the CHTC portal thus far. In terms of our overall target projection-wise, the good news is that we are on track to meet our targets within our timeframe target date of December 31st, 2030, with 855 new residential units have been started or completed since November 21, including 166 supported beds of the 300 target. So we are at 29% of the Nunavut 3000 target already. Interest and application momentum for the Nunalingni Piruqpaalirut Growth Fund program is growing as part of, as of May 12th, there were 20 applications for the fund, 8 were approved, and 11 proposals are under review or receiving support with their proposal or awaiting the selection committee approval. At this point, I'll pass back to Alex. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Stephen. So now let's discuss the Nunalingni Piruqpaalirut Fund in a bit more depth. So the funding program, as Stephen noted, also known as the Growth in Our Land Fund, emerged from the Nunavut 3000 strategy and a 2023 partnership between the Nunavut Housing Corporation and the Center. With over $1 million in combined funding and support, the fund is designed to strengthen Nunavut's nonprofit housing sector by building capacity, promoting collaborative efforts, and enabling the development of affordable and transitional housing. It also aspires to drive innovation, knowledge sharing, and a long-term resilience across the community housing ecosystem. Along with that, the funding program places significant importance on fostering strengthened partnerships and a more interconnected sector. For brevity, I will refer to the Nunalingni Piruqpaalirut Fund as the NPF going forward. So when the NPF was created, it had a set of overarching goals: increasing the affordable housing stock, reducing homelessness, and leveraging the overall resources to expand the housing continuum. In addition to this, it was designed with a few priority areas in mind. You can see them in the current slide. The expectation is that proposals will align with around 1 to 4 of these priority areas, and we will show you where to select these later on. For those of you who are familiar with the fund, you may be aware that the program has undergone a few changes. So building on the feedback from our Nunavut partners over the last few months, we have made modifications to be more responsive to regional needs. So let's go over these. So firstly, the application deadline was extended from January 15th, 2025 to January 15th of 2026 to provide applicants with more time to develop their proposals. Secondly, the eligibility criteria has been expanded to include hamlets with an understanding that they play a critical role in providing housing in several communities. Thirdly, the funding limits for the capacity building and planning and pre-development streams have been increased from $50,000 to $75,000. The research and innovation stream, on the other hand, has been increased from $10,000 to $25,000. This is an acknowledgement that costs are often significantly higher in the north, and it also is intended to encourage applicants to work with Nunavut owned and serving companies. So one of the first questions that often comes up in our preliminary discussions with groups is, am I eligible to apply? So we'll start by saying the NPF is rooted in the fundamental principle of fostering a more inclusive, democratic, and interconnected housing sector. So in line with this, we are keen on opening up pathways for housing adjacent organizations to join the housing sector. Taking that into account, the funding streams can be accessed by various groups, including nonprofit organizations, nonprofit housing providers, housing cooperatives, community groups, and more recently, municipalities. We also welcome various types of housing initiatives, such as affordable housing, transitional housing, and staff housing. I would strongly encourage anybody interested in starting an initiative to speak to me. The NPF is designed to support your housing efforts, no matter how big or small, unique or standardized. We really want to meet you along the way. Another important note is that ineligible groups such as private enterprises, academics, and others are welcome to explore the funding streams. However, in order to submit a proposal, these entities would have to apply in partnership with an eligible organization. The eligible organization would then need to serve as the primary applicant. So the NPF itself is broken down into 3 different streams, allowing us to be adaptable to diverse organizational needs. The streams are capacity building, planning and pre-development, and research and innovation. In the next few slides, I will elaborate on each stream and provide some eligible activities. I want to emphasize that these lists that I'm going to provide are not exhaustive, and we do encourage you to reach out to us with any activities that you require funding for. We are happy to discuss which funding stream would be most appropriate for you, or we can also advise you on other funding options available. Okay, so first let's discuss the capacity building stream. So capacity building is a somewhat nebulous term, so I'll just lay out how we define it. Capacity building initiatives are efforts to strengthen the skills and competencies of your staff and to develop the structures and foundations of your organization. These initiatives should ultimately allow the organization to manage and deliver more housing. So in practice, this can take many forms. We have seen organizations build strategic plans and governance structures. Others have delivered staff workshops on leadership or property management. Some groups have explored asset management strategy and capital planning, can also be used to establish a funding strategy, to conduct a community consultation, and strengthen partnerships with other organizations. The maximum limit here is $75,000. And a question we often receive is, can I apply more than once? So the answer here is yes, but it must be for a completely different project. So let's say you've applied once for a property management training program for your staff. You then notice that your organization requires a governance restructuring to take on new housing units. You could technically submit a second application for that governance restructuring initiative. If you are applying more than once or planning on it, please communicate this during your meeting with the program manager. This allows us to have a more detailed discussion on how the funding program can fully support your needs. So another funding stream that has attracted significant interest is our planning and pre-development stream. This funding stream was designed to cover the costs of the planning and pre-development activities associated with the development of new affordable housing. It also supports organizations in overcoming barriers to secure capital and federal funding. Ultimately, it acknowledges the inherent complexities of the early stages of development, and it seeks to advance projects to the construction stage. It should be noted that this stream is not exclusively for new developments, and the funds can also be used to add in new housing units to existing buildings. Some of the eligible activities for this stream include feasibility studies and business planning for a new development. Our funding can also be used to support architectural designs and due diligence activities such as environmental site assessments, site surveys, and geotechnical reports. Additionally, the stream can be used to cover costs related to development permits, zoning, and land applications. With the intent to address barriers to funding, the stream can also be used to bring in expertise to address to assist you with applications for capital and federal funding. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are just some of the options that are available to you. And now similarly to the capacity building stream, the maximum limit here is 75,000. You are also eligible to apply for the stream more than once, but again, we cannot fund the same activities twice. For planning and pre-development projects, we typically distinguish applications based on the specific development or site being worked on. The final stream available is the research and innovation stream. These funds are designed to support innovation, education, and knowledge transfer. More specifically, the stream looks to support explorations into innovative construction methods and materials and new housing strategies. It can also be used to support pilot initiatives, such as a pilot on a new form of prefabricated housing. With this focus on research and innovation, we have seen that academics and construction initiatives have taken interest in the stream. And while these entities are not eligible to apply as the sole applicant, they are welcome to apply in partnership with eligible organizations such as nonprofit housing providers or municipalities. We do require that eligible organizations serve as the primary applicants in these cases. Unlike the other two streams, the maximum limit here is 25,000. All right. So to give you a clearer picture of what the funding can be used for, we do want to highlight two different projects that we've supported in the past. So the first one is the Cambridge Bay Housing Association's Energy Retrofit Training Program. Through the capacity building stream, the Cambridge Bay Housing Association was able to provide a training program on building techniques, energy efficiency, and analyzing and retrofitting existing buildings. The training was delivered in two different parts. There was a theoretical component that provided trainees with the foundational knowledge required. And then this was followed by a practical component where trainees applied the techniques that they learned under the supervision of the instructor. For longevity, the project was concluded with a long-term capacity building strategy that outlined regular staff training initiatives, recommendations for updates to operating and maintenance procedures, and then finally established a criteria for contractor services. The next project we will discuss is Ukutak Society's Planning and Pre-Development Initiative. This organization is currently working on a new mixed-use development with around 60 residential units and a commercial space. This represents a significant expansion of its mission to address homelessness and housing instability. With our funding, Ukutak has been able to develop their preliminary architectural and functional designs. The Society is also using the funding to conduct a feasibility study, which includes a comprehensive market analysis and an assessment of the financial aspects of the new building. Ultimately, the project has allowed them to bring in expertise, engage other community partners, and advance their project along the development process. So before we dive into the application, we would like to give you an overview of the entire grant process from the initial contact to the project's completion. So the process begins with a preliminary discussion between the regional program manager and the interested organization. The conversation is used to explore the organization's needs and identify the most appropriate funding streams. It's also an opportunity to clarify which activities and costs are eligible for funding and which ones are not. If the applicant hasn't finalized a project idea, we often ask for a short one-pager outlining proposed activities, objectives, and potential costs. Based on this, applicants are provided with feedback and either encouraged to submit a formal application or invited to a follow-up discussion. Once the application is submitted through the online community portal, it is received by the program manager for evaluation, and applications are reviewed on a rolling basis. If information is missing, the application will be returned to the applicant for additional details. Proposals are first assessed for eligibility and then undergo an in-depth review. This includes an evaluation of the clarity of the project's activities, as well as an assessment of the feasibility relative to the organization's capacity, partnerships, and budget. We also place a strong emphasis on the project's potential to transform the organization and contribute to Nunavut's housing sector. So following the program manager's review, the application will be sent to the director of programs for further evaluation and approval. It then goes to the selection committee for review and voting. The full review process can take up to 90 business days, not including any time the application is returned for additional information. That said, we always aim to complete review sooner whenever it is possible. After the project has been fully reviewed and approved, applicants will be informed of the decision by email. They will then be asked to sign the contract via our online signature system called OneSpan. Please note that if applicants are unable to complete the applications online, we are happy to explore other options. So we can send you the application as a document, or we could possibly complete the application with you over the phone. For contracts, there's also an option to complete these manually if that's preferred. After the contract is signed, the first payment will be issued, and then at the end of the project, applicants will be asked to submit a final report. Final payments are tied to the approval of the final report. For longer or larger projects, a progress report may also be requested, but we'll discuss this in a little bit more depth later on. So earlier I mentioned the term selection committee. Let me just expand on that. The selection committee is a 5-person panel composed of housing professionals based in Nunavut, along with a representative from the center. This committee brings both grounded knowledge of local housing needs and insight into effective practices across the sector. Their role is to ensure that project decisions are informed, community relevant, and aligned with broader standards of quality and impact. By drawing on Nunavummiut insight, the committee helps create a fair and well-rounded review process. In the center's other growth funds, selection committees have been an invaluable resource in assessing realistic project costs, identifying overlaps or gaps in current initiatives, and highlighting priorities that might otherwise be overlooked. All right, so now let's talk about the application itself. All applications are completed on our My Center application portal, which can be found at community.center.support. Once you have created your account and logged in, you should see the following screen. It will lay out a few different options from our resource inventory, organizational compass, and funding. If you have not contacted the program manager yet, I would advise you to select the Contact Us button to schedule a preliminary discussion. If you are ready to apply, you can select funding, which is circled here in yellow. From there, you'll see a variety of different funding streams available, from our Sector Transformation Fund to our other growth funds. You may need to scroll down a bit until you arrive at the NPF options. There you will select the tile of the funding stream that fits your project needs. You will then arrive at the title and declaration page of your application. This page will ask you for a project title and a confirmation that you meet the eligibility criteria. So while we don't have any hard and fast rules for the project title, it should reflect the goals and activities of the project. And please ensure that it is clear yet concise. If you are applying more than once, we do ask that each project have a unique project name. For the eligibility section, we ask that you review the terms of our funding program. So this includes things like confirming your organization falls within our eligibility parameters, and then that your organization and your project align with the selected funding stream. Additionally, it will ask you to confirm your project is submitted before the deadline and that the funds will be spent before December 31st, 2027. Following the preliminary meeting with the program manager, the eligibility of your project will already have been confirmed, and most of these details will already be communicated. So this serves as more of a reminder before you start off your application. So after the completion of that initial page, you will arrive at the first section of the application called the project details. One of the first things you may notice is the bar at the top of the application. This bar outlines all the sections that must be completed. You'll see that in this image, they are colored red and have X's on them. This indicates that the required fields in those sections, which are marked with an asterisk, have not been completed yet. In this project details section, you will be asked to provide a summary of the project. For this field, we are looking for a brief overview of your organization and your community's context. We also want you to spend most of your time in this field explaining the main objectives and funded activities of the project and describing how this will strengthen your organization and the sector. And then we want to see, or rather we want to understand how this project will help the advancement of housing in your community. If you recall earlier, I did mention that you would be required to select 1 to 4 of the priority areas for your project to demonstrate that it aligns with the goals of this fund. So right below the summary, you will be asked to choose the priority areas. The next thing you'll see in this section are questions regarding the partners and consultants involved in the project. If you select yes for either of these, there will be additional fields that open up asking for the name and involvement of the partners or consultants. For consultants, you will also be asked to provide a quote in the file upload section with a breakdown of the costs and services provided. Please note that we do view consultants differently than project partners. So with consultants, we're referring to paid experts assisting with or driving the project activities. Partners are community organizations or business associates that will contribute and possibly benefit from the project outcomes. Partnerships will at times be compensated through honorariums, but they're not contracted to drive the project activities. So let me provide an example. If an organization is developing a strategic plan and they hire an external party to lead community consultations, document meeting notes, and then also to complete the final strategic plan document, this would be considered a consultant. The organization may then choose to involve a local developer and an educational nonprofit in the community consultations. Those two entities would be seen as partners in this case. Okay, so moving on, the last field will ask you to consider challenges associated with the project. So for us, this is a question about feasibility. Not only do we want you to consider challenges that may arise, but we also want you to outline how you would work around them. Please ensure that you're only listing challenges that are directly related to the delivery of the project activities. For example, if you are looking to deliver workshops to your staff, you may face struggles flying in consultants due to flight delays or other logistical obstacles. So we really want to see you consider all of the possibilities, and we want to know how you'll circumvent these issues. For every project, we do ask applicants to select the objectives that they are trying to achieve. So these will be selected from a drop-down menu in the objectives section of the application. So the list of possible objectives you can select are here. Similarly to the priority areas, we ask that you select between 1 to 4 of these objectives. We do ask that you're realistic about these. This component is important to the application as you will be asked to report on them in your progress and final reports. These objectives will also appear on your contract. In the objective section, you'll also be asked to provide additional context. For each selection, applicants must explain the organizational or sector-wide need the chosen objective aims to address. You will then be expected to list project outcomes or milestones that demonstrate that you are achieving the chosen objective and that you are addressing the project needs. These outcomes should be completed in a SMART format. So what we mean is we want them to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Next, you will arrive at the timeline and activities section. This is where you will lay out all of your project activities. This section is split up into 3 different parts. So there is the planning and initiation stage, execution stage, and the closure stage. So let's go through each of these. So the planning and initiation phase provides an opportunity to lay down the groundwork before launching your project. So this may include things like assembling your project team and clearly defining roles and responsibilities. The execution phase is the core of your project, where the majority of the work is carried out and key deliverables are produced. The closure phase marks the final steps required to complete your project, such as finalizing a report or receiving board approval. You will also notice that there is a comments field for each of these stages. This can be used to provide additional context on the project timeline, but this is not a mandatory field. A rule of thumb for the activities section is only include activities that we will be funding and that are relevant to your project. So this section is important as it will later appear on your contract in the same way the objectives will. And you will also be asked to report on these. When filling this out, we do ask that you complete it in a bullet point format. It makes our evaluations a lot easier. And when deciding your timeline, please be mindful of the application processing time when entering the project start date. The timeline should be set up in a sequential manner with no overlaps. So if the initiation stage ends on, let's say, May 30th, then the execution stage will start on May 31st. Okay, so one of the most vital parts of every application is the budget. Like many funders, we do place a lot of value on knowing how our funding is being allocated. With this in mind, please be as clear and detailed as possible in the budget. I recommend using the comment section next to each budget line to add more details. If certain expenses, like let's say direct costs or consultant costs, cover multiple goods and services, we do appreciate cost breakdowns in the comments. Another thing to take into account is that you should only include costs that are directly applicable to the project activities. Same goes for the revenue section. We only want to know about other funding partners and grants that are financing the project activities. Along with the budget, you will also be asked to provide a primary and secondary contact for the application in case we require additional information, and then an accounting contact for payments, and then finally, two signers for the contract. All right, so lastly, let's just go over a few important documents you'll need to submit with your application. All applicants must submit their letters of patent or incorporation documents to confirm their organization type. In addition to this, a void check will be requested so that we can issue payments. And as I mentioned earlier, if you are working with consultants, we do need a quote from each one that is involved. The quote should outline the services they will provide, the cost per service, and the total amount. These figures should match the amounts entered under consultant costs in the budget section. Now, depending on how much funding you are requesting, there will be different document requirements. So if you're asking for under $25,000, we'll just need the names and contact information of two references. If your request is between $25,000 and $50,000, we ask for one letter of support. And if it is over $50,000, we'll need two letters of support. These letters should support your initiative and elaborate on your organization's capacity to carry out the project. This should ideally come from contacts with related experiences or your community partners. The letters should not come from organizations with a financial interest in the funding outcome, such as a consultant. Finally, for all applications that are over $25,000, we do ask that you provide us with the most recent audited financial statement. If your organization is new, we can accept a board-approved budget for the upcoming fiscal year. So while not directly related to the submission process itself, we do want to briefly touch on typical payments and reporting schedules. So for projects that are 1 year or less, the payment schedule includes a first disbursement of 70% and a second one of 30%. These shorter projects are only expected to submit one final report. And then the final payment will be subject to the approval of that final report. When a project is over a year long, the applicant is expected to submit a progress report 1 month before the halfway mark, and they are also required to submit a final report. In this case, the first payment is 60%, and then the second and final payments are each 20%. These payments are tied to the approval of the progress and final reports, respectively. So before we move on to our Q&A, I do want to bring your attention to some of the other funding available. The first one we would like to highlight is CMHC's Affordable Housing Fund for Indigenous and Northern Housing. This funding program offers low interest and forgivable loans to support the creation and renewal of affordable housing. I would strongly encourage any interested organizations to reach out to CMHC. Additionally, we wanted to highlight two exciting funding opportunities currently available through NHC. So there is the Nunavut Affordable Housing Supply Incentive Program and the Supported Housing Capital Program. I would like to invite Stephen to share some more details on these initiatives.
Thank you, Alex. As Alex mentioned, we do have a couple of exciting and relevant funding streams. There is actually, I'm going to say a few words about two programs, but we do have more detailed, you can drill down with more information and also program guides on our nunavuthousing.ca website if you want to apply or if you want just further information. But essentially, the first program that Alex mentioned is the Nunavut Affordable Housing Supply Incentive, which was launched last year. We call it NACI for short, managed by us, the NHC, and aims to expand affordable housing options in Nunavut by providing financial support for new rental and home ownership units. So the key features of the NACI program are for forgivable loans of up to $150,000 per unit for eligible affordable housing projects. The target that we have within this sector of the Nunavut 3000 initiative is 900 new affordable housing units, so it fits within that. And eligible housing types include single-family homes, multiplexes, condominiums, cooperatives, modular homes, and secondary units. Exclusions does not cover work camps, nursing homes, special care homes, or other licensed facilities. One would need other types of funding for those. So eligible applicants include open to Inuit organizations, private developers, non-profit organizations, and also cooperatives. And the program is designed to increase the supply of affordable rental and home ownership units while ensuring housing remains accessible to Nunavummiut. So that's a bit about the NACI program. The other program that I'd like to mention that I also am deeply involved in, the Supported Housing Capital Program, which is also managed by the Nunavut Housing Corporation, NHC, and provides capital funding to support the development of supported housing units for vulnerable populations in Nunavut. This program is part of the Nunavut 3000, Eligibility, and aims to create 300 supported housing units by 2030. So key features, the funding amounts of $100,000 per single room occupancy, SROs we call them, or $150,000 per self-contained unit. And eligibility includes Inuit organizations, non-profit organizations, community housing providers, and municipal corporations, which we actually expanded in the last few months. And projects must align with communities' social priorities and demonstrate long-term sustainability. The use of the funds is for construction of new supported housing units or single-room occupancy, and major renovations, replacements, or redevelopment of existing housing. Some of the organizations I've spoken to, and at NANPO at the gathering we had, we're hearing a lot of need for staff housing, And that would be more aligned with the NACI program rather than the Supported Housing Capital Program. But we know that with some of these initiatives, there is need for staff housing with the supported housing initiatives. So one would need to make that clear and see if perhaps some dual application might be able to take place there. And with that, I'll pass back to Alex for wrapping up and questions and comments.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jean-Francois. I am in the communications team here at the Community Housing Transformation Center. I've been managing the chat. I've got a few questions that came in directly. I think we've just answered most of them, including a few that were relevant to staff housing. However, Alex, I do have one here for you. What percentage of funding is provided on signing, and what is the holdback?
So I think, like I mentioned in the payment schedule and reporting schedules, for projects that are under a year long, then the first payment would be 70%, and then there would be a final payment of 30%. And that payment of 30% is conditional on the approval of your final report. For projects that are over a year long, those will have a first payment of 60%, and then the second and third payments will be of 20%. And those are conditional on the approval of the progress report and the final report.
Great, thank you. Follow-up question, what if an organization is not necessarily new, but has never completed an audit? How does that affect their application?
I think, that would be a unique case. And in that case, we could probably accept a board approved a financial budget for the upcoming year. But it's not a case that we've dealt with before, so I'd encourage you to just speak to me one-on-one, and then we can sort that out. Yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us today. I hope that was informative for all of you, and I would really encourage you guys to reach out to me if you have any more questions. You can see my email here. It's a.wolf@center.support. I'm really happy to discuss any project ideas that you may have and to work with you through your application.
Thank you so much for joining us today.